those filthy colonists ambushed your detachment using the storm as cover. You could hear the screams of your men as you ran into the woods. There is a farmhouse in the distance, and you head toward it to seek cover. Carefully looking around for any colonists, you see the place appears to be deserted, so you quickly duck inside to get out of the rain and bar the door behind you. You're inside, but don't even have time to catch your breath or steady your nerves before you hear footfalls outside. Welcome to Rogue Records, where we invite you to sit back and relax, if you can, and hear the true tale of America's Hercules. Ironically enough, the story of America's Hercules actually begins off the coast of Portugal in the Azores, at the home of the noble Francisco family. They had just welcomed their second child, a baby boy they named Pedro. His mother tucks him into his crib, eager to get some much-needed sleep herself, unaware of the tragedy to come. It had been too long. The kids were too quiet. The baby never sleeps more than 3 hours at a time, so Mrs. Francisco went to check on her children. The children were gone. Both her daughter and Pedro had been taken in the night. Many theories as to why the children were kidnapped have been posited, from an attempt at ransom to revenge against the Franciscos. But the reasons didn't matter to Mrs. Francisco. Her children were gone, and she would never see either of them again. America, the New World, a place of opportunity and new beginnings for all those that find their way to her shores. And so it was for a young boy found wandering those Virginia docks. He spoke no English and just kept repeating his name, Pedro Francisco. The boy was sent to the Prince George County poorhouse, where they realized the boy was speaking Portuguese, so they sent for someone they knew could speak that language. They sent for Captain Winston, a local official and, coincidentally, uncle to famed patriot Patrick Henry. Pedro explained that he had been stolen from his home and that his older sister had died in the crossing. Captain Winston took pity on the boy and agreed to take him into his own household as an indentured servant, where he could grow up in a real family while learning a trade. Settled in with the Winston family, the boy grew quickly, both in stature and strength. In fact, he grew so much that the trade he should take became obvious to Captain Winston. Pedro, now known as Peter, apprenticed as a blacksmith, building not just his skill, but his body along with it. And Peter just kept on growing. To give some context around just how much Peter grew, it's important to note that the worldwide height of men in the 1700s was between 5'4" and 5'5". Here's Kevin Hart to represent 17th century men. Even by today's standards, a man that is 6'4" and 260 pounds, like The Rock, is considered huge. Peter Francisco was 6'8" and also 260 pounds, making him, for his time, a giant. The Second Virginia Convention was held in 1775 at St. John's Episcopal Church. Hostilities with the Redcoats were mounting, and the Virginian gentry were meeting to discuss whether to arm the militia in preparation for war. Peter Francisco came to hear his adopted cousin, Patrick Henry, speak.
If we were base enough to desire it, it is now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat, but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come. It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
Patrick's words resonated inside his giant frame, and a fire was kindled. Like the glowing embers of the forges he worked, an intense desire for liberty now smoldered in Peter's heart. In 1776, with the war well and truly begun, Peter joined the Virginia militia. Astounded at his size and strength, his brothers-in-arms named him the Virginia Hercules. And Peter lived up to his name, crushing enemies on the battlefield in numerous skirmishes. His intimidating presence and courage made him a nightmare for the British. But he was wounded at Fort Mifflin and took some time to recover at Valley Forge. It was here that Peter first met another legend of the American Revolution, General George Washington. Colonel John Mayo, Peter's commanding officer, gave his reports directly to General Washington, recounting the astonishing tales of the Virginian giant's fearsome actions on the battlefield. General Washington was so impressed by Francisco's courage and intimidating presence that he had a special gift commissioned. An intimidating man needs an intimidating weapon, so General Washington had an enormous broadsword made. He presented to Peter a 6-foot-long sword and charged him to kill the English with his new toy, and Peter would get the chance very, very soon. Stony Point was a British-controlled and heavily fortified fort in modern-day upstate New York. Virginia militiamen, under General Mad Anthony Wayne, attacked the fort. They approached the fort in the dead of night, using the cloud cover to conceal their forces. After breaching the outer wall, they faced heavy resistance, and Francisco was finally able to unleash the gift General Washington had bestowed upon him. He faced Redcoats on all sides, and using his massive broadsword, cut each man down in turn. As he moved through the fort, he left a trail of carnage in his wake. All told, he slew 12 men by himself. Peter saw the British flag flying atop the fort, the symbol of English oppression over him and his countrymen. His destruction of the enemy's flag signaled the American victory. Upon hearing General Wayne's report on Peter's deeds during the battle, General Washington awarded Peter a bonus of $2,000 for his heroism and sheer brutal efficiency. Peter's exploits would continue to grow during the Battle of Camden. Colonial forces under General Horatio Gates, while numerically superior, were undertrained compared to the battle-hardened British troops under the ruthless Lord General Cornwallis. Peter was placed with the other Virginia militiamen along the Eastern Front. Men had been given bayonets to use, most for the first time, and were unsure how to effectively use them. When Cornwallis's forces pushed up from the south, the Virginia lines were shattered, and many of the troops fled the field. Peter held the line as long as he could, Redcoats closing in for the kill. As more and more of his fellow Virginians retreated, Peter soon found himself practically surrounded by the enemy. The Virginian giant had to make a run for it. Dodging musket shots and vaulting broken palisades, he ran until his sides ached. But luckily for him, an overzealous cavalry officer got too close, and Francisco was able to knock him off his horse. He had to get word back to his commanders that the Eastern Front was broken. The British were hot on his heels. So he made a beeline directly towards General Gates' command post. Upon hearing the news of Cornwallis's advances in the east, General Gates ordered the retreat, marking one of the worst defeats the colonials had faced so far. And Peter was sent to rejoin his men. Along the way, he came upon some soldiers attempting to free a cannon that had been stuck in the mud. With the Redcoats continuing to advance, this position would soon be overrun, and the British would capture the deadly weapon of war and turn it on the colonials. To prevent this, Peter simply picked up the cannon and ran it into the woods, where it could be hidden until colonial troops could reclaim it later. According to records of the event, the cannon weighed over 1,000 pounds. Peter's luck was about to run out in North Carolina, at the Battle of Guilford Courthouse. The field was arrayed in 3 staggered walled fortifications where the colonials could retreat and regroup as needed. The fighting was bloody, and Lord Cornwallis showed his merciless nature by firing wide-spreading grapeshot into his own men in order to break the colonial positions. And break they did, the first two falling quickly. As the Redcoats advanced beyond the second set of fortifications, they entered the trees, where Peter was waiting for them. His broadsword at the ready, he fought like a man possessed, and took down 11 soldiers. They were too much for even the Virginia Hercules, and he was stabbed multiple times and left for dead on the battlefield. As darkness fell, he was discovered, barely alive, and smuggled away from the fighting. He was sent back to Virginia to recuperate, and he spent the next few months recovering from his injuries. But while he may have been laying low, trouble, it seems, had been looking for him. The Redcoats had come to conscript food and valuables from the local farms to support their battalion. They noticed that Peter had a very nice set of silver buckles and demanded that he hand them over. Peter explained that he was recovering from an injury and couldn't bend down, but that the officer could take them himself. So the officer knelt down to recover the silver, all the while the hilt of his saber sticking up behind his back. Which Peter promptly stole and used to kill the officer and his nearby comrades. When other soldiers came to see what the disturbance was, they saw a hulking behemoth standing over the bodies of their men and calling into the nearby woods. "Now's your time, boys. We'll dispatch these few and then attack the main body." They didn't know if Peter was telling the truth or not, but one look at the raging giant that had just slaughtered their compatriots, the Redcoats decided that discretion was the better part of valor, and ran away, leaving Peter with a new sword and a couple extra horses to boot. If the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776 was the date the United States was conceived, then on October 19th, 1781, when Cornwallis signed the Articles of Capitulation, formally surrendering to Washington's forces, our country was finally born. Among the legendary founding fathers of our nation there that day was one that stood head and shoulders above the rest. If you enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, and comment below. I promise to respond to you as soon as I can.